Hello, hello! Today we'll be covering episode 20, and to start off, we're going to take one last look at the Weeping Peninsula. I know we rushed off in a hurry to finish the quest line with Edgar and Irina, or at least that portion of the quest line, but we didn't really get a chance to look around this part, the boss room. The first thing that I feel is most distinct about it is how much lower it is than Castle Morn. It's basically in the ocean, just barely above it. Any high tide would surely submerge this area, right? But there's tombstones here, which makes it feel like it's a little more permanent of a place, especially the structure of this wall and arch, which I'm not sure what the wall is protecting from, or if perhaps this was a much larger or longer part of the peninsula and that it is sunken into the sea. That's the only thing I could imagine. Not the only thing, but you get the idea. It's confusing. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But in the boss room, we see lots of bodies, right? And the interesting thing is they look burned, and they're not wearing armor. They seem to be of commoners, right? Regular Joe Schmoes here. Sure, there's a handful of weapons. There's Edgar's halberd, there's a long sword, a basic spear like Patches has, a wooden shield. Actually, it kind of looks like the modeled shield we'll see when we get to Stormvale Castle. So, I mean, it makes sense. Edgar said he was sent to Castle Morn by Godric the Grafted. And so, seems to be a part of his forces. But there's tombstones. There's a big old tree here, which implies that it's had the ability to grow here for some time on this little mound. And most notably, of the boss arena, is this giant tombstone with a hole in it. Big old gaping hole. It's oddly reminiscent of the tombstones that were in the Ringed City DLC of Dark Souls 3. That first stretch that you go on after the Dreg Heap is just littered with these tombstones that have holes in it, ones that look just like it. A lot of people says this hails back to cut content in Dark Souls 3. There was an entire zone that didn't make it into the finished product but had tombstones much like that. So perhaps they've been itching to use it for some time. I believe we will see more of these when we go far, far north of the map. But just interesting little details here that don't seem to connect to much. I'd love to hear any ideas concerning the place, but this has stumped me thoroughly. Not sure what it's all about, but today we're going to go explore that gazebo in the Mistwood that I mentioned at the end of the last episode, so let's get to it. This is actually my first episode that I am recording with the microphone arm, so I'm hoping that I'm at appropriate distance from the microphone. All tests that I've done so far have turned out quite well. And so hopefully everything will be level, and I'll be able to record these episodes more often. I know they've been releasing on a set schedule, but I anticipate delays. Every YouTuber and their dog talks about what delays they have when producing any sort of content. But I'm just doing this for fun, so thankfully it's not my job or anything. Alright, so we go by the minor Erd tree here. And in the Mistwood we have this bizarre structure. We haven't seen anything quite like it in our journeys. I would say the closest that we've come to it is that wizard tower that we saw all the way down here on the Weeping Peninsula. It seems to have similarly dark blue colored bricks. Very nice stonework. Fairly good condition despite being covered in vines and overgrowth. It seems very robust. Discernible symbols. There's the clover. A clover. And the doors. Those might be wood. The blue light seems to be coloring everything, so yeah, those seem like wood, but we're not seeing tree iconography, or lions, or axes, or any other symbols that we've learned to recognize thus far. But we do have this pedestal here in the middle. Big old button. And when we stand on it, it lights up. The lighting effect is a lot less dramatic because I have my starlight spell out. But, here we are, and we begin to descend. And it goes deep. It's still going. And it's still going. And we can't even see the bottom when we peek over the edge. But there we saw some structures. Briefly. This must have been a colossal undertaking. And then it opens up. We see buildings, bridges, archways, and some form of night sky. Or something that looks a lot like it. We see ruins, more pillars, fires. And this place is colossal in terms of scope. As a zone, it's not that large, but still. I was quite wowed when I first played this. On my very first character, I remember coming down here and being blown away because, well, any other Souls game had nothing quite like this. In terms of tone, just the way you interact with it, just the colors of the environment. It was so unearthly and un-Souls-like. Or so I presumed at the time. But here we find some Dukist herba for the very first time. Let's take a look here. An herb that grows in the false night in and around the Eternal City. Material used for crafting items, soaked in arcane dew. It gives off the faint glow of starlight. So interesting that it grows down here where we saw that false night sky. It also... yeah, it mentions the Eternal City, so perhaps these structures are in some way linked to the Eternal City. And it's worth noting that even though this is an underground zone, we can use our horse. We find a melted mushroom, and a little camp, and a noble body with some silver fireflies for us. Melted mushroom, okay. Melted mushroom that grows in the false night sky in and around the Eternal City, so similar as the star, or the dew-kissed herba. It drips with a viscous fluid that behaves much like oil. Gross. Here we see another noble's body. Looks like a noble expedition may have come down here to scavenge things. We've seen them doing that on the surface. And here we see these mushy, melty looking fellows. And fighting them is an absolute chore, especially the first time you come across them. They only seem to really take damage from elemental. And yet, they don't take much. They're really tanky. They don't stumble easily. And they're not that fun to fight, in my opinion. Not until you have a great source elemental damage. It just takes so much. How about a magic blast? See? Nothing. And it could be magic. I'm sure somebody's screaming at their monitor right now. Why are you using magic? They have magic weapons. Somebody's out there. So we'll try fire out. Why not? And maybe it's the fact I'm using a silly straight sword. It's noticed that their backswing is also an attack. Like when they pull their weapon back, I mean. And so you want to give them a wide berth when you can. And that, yeah, that drawing it back is also an attack. But yeah, the fire doesn't seem to fare much better. To be fair, it's only a grease. But they can have their posture broken and can be critical hit. And when they die, they melt into a formless mass of just gunk find a level 4 smithing stone. Pretty high for us. But I wanted to examine their weapon. I acquired some beforehand. Harpoon with a tip made from a sharpened meteorite shard. Wielded by the claymen who infest dynastic remains. The blade emits a faint light and deals magic damage. So, dynastic remains. Well, looks like we kind of have a name for this architectural style we've not yet seen. Or we haven't seen before, I should say. We can refer to them as Dynast Ruins for now. Looks like we have a statue here. Some legs. Flowing skirts. Roots. Nothing much. But around it we find golden centipedes. Interesting. Because they're the sign of that fundamentalist golden order, I believe. Yeah, the golden desiccated remains of a centipede. Kept as a fetish by Golden Order fundamentalists, especially the hunters of those who live in death. As such, they're found near churches and similar. So, fighting these fellows, not that fun, and also they don't give that much money. It's probably fine if you have a group of people or some good summon. I could probably bring a summon here and have a ball of a time. Actually, I'm curious now. Because there are so many fellows here. I don't believe I've showed off Lutel the Headless yet. So I'm curious to see how well Lutel will do. Ooh. Not so great. I mean, Lutel's biggest selling point is the fact that she just leaves whenever she's in trouble. And they do the damage. Just fighting so bland. Takes a while. Killing one gives 120. Which is better than some stuff up on the surface, I'll admit. Your best bet is probably to just repeatedly backstab these fellows because they're so slow. Even then, a backstab only does like 50% more damage than a light attack. I'd give it a 2 out of 10. Don't fight Claymen. Not worth. So in that case, we're going to loot the area and leave. Because the rewards are so bad, it is not worth our time. A slow start today. I feel like the first episode in a series of recordings is always the slowest. But, that's to be expected. We're just getting into the mysteries. It's interesting. I'm curious to know, because Lutel has enwreathed the tip of her spear in death. It said that in her description, right? I wonder what the output of that actually is in terms of functionality, since it always seems to be there. I doubt it's the status effect Deathblight, which we have yet to run into. But perhaps I'm wrong. Another health beetle we can top off. Lutel's still here, despite her tiny amount of health. Grab the melty mushrooms. I wish there was... just seems to be floral symbolism. Perhaps a sign of life outgrowing. There's not too much here just yet. This stone pillar is interesting. Okay, it's not that interesting. It's different. It's unexpected. It's fairly even across. I guess it tapers a little bit near the top. Can we get a better look at it? It goes way up there. I wish I had kept an eye out for it when we were on the elevator. I was looking at the grand sky instead. It almost looks like a petrified trunk, but it's got segments in it, and that's the weird part. Almost like it was deliberately placed there. Oh, I want to grab that. I don't even know where it is. It's probably not even worth it. Now, grab this. And then over here, we want to drop down carefully, because you can easily fall down 2 stories, and, well, that's more than 2 stories, but you can fall 2 levels of this building, and that is not worth it at all. Silver pickled foulfoot. now we slay the beetle. And we find Oracle Bubbles. A sorcery. A sorcery that requires Arcane, a stat we do not have much of. Sorcery of the claymen who served as priests in the ancient dynasty. Produces several small magical bubbles that drift towards foes before they naturally pop. Charging increases the delay before the bubbles pop. The claymen search for lost oracles within their bubbles. So they seem to be some sort of priests capable of some form of divination. Or at least they might have been. The fact that they have these very nice ruins and they are simply wielding shards of meteorite on the ends of their spears leads me to believe that something was lost, that perhaps they are not quite as cool as they used to be. There's some glory, something important, valuable was lost. Alright, I don't believe there's a whole lot left here. But we see more of these different ruins. Those are distinct from the Dynast over here. These are much the same style as we saw in the gazebo above, as well as that wizard tower. Architecturally, they seem to be similar. To me, at least. Tidy blue brickwork. Another noble who has lost his life. Makes me wonder what the nobles are searching for. Just anything of value, perhaps? And who's sending them out? Given that Godric seems to be perceived as more or less a country bumpkin by Kenneth Haidt and affiliates, or everyone around him, it seems that he hid from a General Radon in the castle. He lost to Melania. Just it seems like Godric has a loose grasp of his power when it comes to holding Limgrave, and so I wonder if him sending out nobles is him trying to capture any resource he possibly can. Beast liver. Has it been 17 minutes already? Oh, we've just barely started the Siofra River. Giant crab. Has some crab eggs. Maybe I'll finally look at the crab eggs description. I remember telling the audience I would read that a good handful of episodes back, and I don't believe I did. It's not that important. I mean, there's some tie-ins to elements we'll see much later on, so perhaps I'll glance at it now. But we are finding plenty of ghost glovewort, as if this is a massive catacomb. Alright, grab this site of grace. And this is the Siofra Riverbank. Interesting. Okay. Oh, that's a glitch. I'm not supposed to have any map yet. Look at that. At one particular level of zoom, I get a sliver of the map. But if I zoom in more, it's gone. Alright, Siofra Riverbank. Okay, let's read that description that we had for the crab eggs. Maybe I have read them. I have 5, and I think I just grabbed 3. So, eggs of eggs of large crabs which dwell in the shallows. Material used for crafting items. A nutritious foodstuff that warms from within. The flavor is exquisite. Only those of comfort and means know the truth. A crab's eggs are more delectable than its meat. A very interesting, very it's a description that has a lot of character to it. A simple character, but still character, implying that our narrator is not impassive and they're not completely neutral. We see that a lot across a lot of items. We do not have a neutral narrator. I like to believe it's kind of the musings of the player character, but there's just stuff in there the player character wouldn't know, so that's not a cohesive story. Another thing worth noting, there is a lot of flora. We've passed a lot of very green plants on our way up. There are trees with golden leaves, golden yellow leaves, oranges even. And plants that in their description have mentioned that they only grow under the false night sky here, underground with the eternal city, whatever the eternal city is. We don't have a lot left in this episode, but I hope to have some musings while we're here, since we may not go too far. I'm trying to remember what was next on my roadmap. I should just glance at it. I have it open on the other monitor. I remembered this time. So we have some weird floating blue orbs of electricity over there. Another crab. We have this obelisk here. And this is a very curious obelisk, because we can go up and we can light its flame just by putting our hand in front of it. That's not a magic I possess, or that Sieghelm possesses. But, the obelisk is interesting. It's got all these men at the bottom between pillars clutching something. It looks like, I could be wrong, but their arms seem to be folded in some capacity. There's more of these figures. Yeah, it's all very strange. The braziers here in the Siofra River, we see more of them over there. In fact, that one of the 8 pillars also lit up when we lit this close one. The braziers we light in the Siofra River look almost exactly like the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, Nimrud, Iraq, British Museum. I just read that verbatim. That probably sounded horrible. It looks like the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, which is located in Nimrud, Iraq, part of the British Museum. I'm not a history buff, but I believe that the obelisk here is almost ripped entirely. The one in-game is ripped from the one that's based in our reality, and I believe they changed either 1 or 2 of the murals, or the reliefs here depicted on it. Which ones were switched out, I don't know off the top of my head. But it seems that they're very much interested in depicting an ancient civilization. They really want to convey how old it is, and honestly, the Dynast feels a lot older than, well, the wizard tower-like architecture like we see up there. But they seem to be mingling, so one could suspect that perhaps one is the later era, like that the wizard tower architecture is the newer era of the Dynast. I don't think so. Personally, we will look more into that in time. But it seems that there's these 2 distinct cultures, one a lot older than the other. And I believe that is deliberate. So here we have these spirit-looking fellows, and they have these clubs that look like molars at the end of a skull on a stick. And this fellow over here has a thing that's just antlers. Oh, good. I was afraid I wasn't going to connect that. They're wearing big old horns and furs. And they seemed to have been foraging this dew-kissed herba. And the animals aren't bothered by them. I'll try to point out more soon. But the animals have nothing against these furred folk. They seem almost like a cross between the natives here in America and some other culture, perhaps. Maybe like ancient Celts or something. Hard to say. But I did grab the jawbone axe. We can take a look at that now. Axe made from an herbivore skull. Weapon of the ancestral followers who disdain metal. This axe is more of a bludgeon. It forgoes a bladed edge, instead using the beast's molar teeth to buffet foes, dealing strike damage. So it has the axe attack pattern, but it is blunt, because it's a bunch of molars. Here we have another obelisk. I think this is kind of a zoomed-in version of what we were just looking at, actually. Well, the bottom one is. The middle, maybe it is. Yeah, it seems to be like one side of the obelisk. But, even just at a glance, it seems to be depicting... I'm gonna put on the Arrow's Reach Talisman. It seems to be depicting, of course, society in some capacity, and something ritualistic going on. Looks like prayer, perhaps people bowing their heads in prayer, or at least one of them there. Perhaps people tending to each other here. Yeah, it just gives the sense of this is very old. And I probably should have looked into not just the name of the obelisk, but perhaps what it meant and stood for, and we could pull some things from it there. He lived. Oh no. Alright. There we go. They're not that hard to parry, I just haven't parried them in a while. It's not a skill issue, you guys. My game is lagging. Obviously. And we find the 6th Armorer's Cookbook. Let's take a look at that. So we found 2, 3, and 6. No, 1, 2, 3, and 6. So perhaps we're not supposed to be in the CO for Riverwell for a little bit. A record of crafting techniques left by an armor who served the great General Rodon. There we see that fire pot again and the grease, the flame grease. This one allows us to make preserving boluses, which is very nice. Interesting that we find them out here. Yeah, the ability to cure scarlet rot buildup. That seems a little deliberate. Not sure why, though. But it seems that whoever was holding it was wary of scarlet rot. So here we have more of the... Oh, crab's pissed at me. Obelisks with candles, depicting the same thing. More of the dynast. There's these spirit followers. I do have a set of their clothes. I should look at that before the episode ends. There, we found a lump of flesh. I believe our first, so we'll need to look at that as well. And we will hastily escape. There's not too much to be gained from fighting them. Ooh. Yeah, not too much to be gained from fighting them. I should probably try out some of the other weapons that we got last time as well. Okay. Level 2 smithing stone. Somber smithing stone. I believe we want to check out something over here. Deliberately trying to avoid those bubbles. I should show off what they do. Alright, I'll do it on horseback. Where is it? I thought I saw one of them over here. There it is. So if we get close to it enough that it gets pissed, it charges up and it shoots lightning. Looks like 6 times and then it gives out. If you aren't on horseback and you're standing in water, there's a very good chance it'll hit you at your regular move speed. And if the lightning connects to the water, I believe it ripples. They're very mean. I've seen them fold to nothing hosts while invading down here. So very dangerous sorts of stuff. Alright, so before I get more off track and absent-minded, we found a lump of flesh. Yeah, I don't know if we found any of these before. We may have. A lump of beast flesh filled with rich juices, material used for crafting items, found by hunting carnivorous beasts, meat suitable for rustic feasts. And I was going to look at the clothes of these fellows. Great horned headband. Headband decorated by a pair of great horns, worn by ancestral follower warriors. The ancestral followers keep their distance from the Erd Tree, awaiting new buds. They are certain to sprout from their very flesh and indeed their souls. So that seems interesting, because when we've seen things sprouting in the past, new buds sprouting, It makes me think of the bone, teeth, and horn structures coming out of the Misbegotten, and other creatures afflicted with the Crucible. So it seems very interesting to me. Yeah, why not? Why not? Yeah. Good old grafted greatsword. Alright. The Trina's Lily. Very good. And I think we're going to get to this obelisk and cut there, so we'll kill a couple more things. Okay, I can still light roll this thing. So I wanted to show off this Zweihander a little. I don't believe I'd had an opportunity to before. Maybe I have. And look at him with his bow. Very rude. And dispatched. Alright. Here we have some braziers. It looks like they're wreathed with a little bit of a swirly pattern. And here we have yet another obelisk, so this is our third. Okay, we will cut there. I want to say thank you for joining me. I didn't really have a thought to conclude, so hopefully it's not too jarring, but thanks for being with me. I hope you have a great day, and goodbye.
Hey!